my homestead. I like to cook seasonally, and you probably have heard me say this before. Whatever's in season, that's what we should be cooking. It's going to be the best, it's going to be the freshest, and it's going to be the most frugal, the most affordable for us to cook for our families. So today I want to cook a very simple meal. That's something that I grew up with back in the day when my Russian mama always used to do it for us. It's the middle of the week, so it's one of those things that quick put together a meal. And it's gonna be pretty much vegetarian. And I'm gonna put together this very simple meal. See, yesterday, my nephew and I and my husband, the three of us went foraging for mushrooms at the back of our property, and we found many different mushrooms, and my nephew is pretty knowledgeable about mushrooms, and we picked some beautiful honey mushrooms, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Now, this is towards the end of the season because it's middle of October, and it's towards the end of the season. The honey mushroom season begins sometime late, I want to say late August, early September, and all the way through September into October, and now it's the end of the season. But it's okay, we're able to find a whole bunch of beautiful honey mushrooms. So what are they? So basically they like to grow on fallen trees, on like old stumps, on some sort of breaking down, rotten kind of like wood. So if you see something growing in the middle of the field and they look like honey mushrooms, they're not honey mushrooms. Why? Because they're not growing on decaying wood. And the other way to identify them is by doing a spore print test. So let me show you what that looks like. My nephew taught me all about it. So we picked a big basket full of honey mushrooms, and I already cleaned them and I removed most of the stems because the stems can be a little woody, but they have these beautiful little caps with a little spots on the top, and they have this color that resemble honey. So if you look closely, they will have like tiny little skirt almost like on the bottom, okay? And they like to grow in clusters on the stumps, on the old decaying wood. But this is called the mushroom spore print test. So it probably would have looked better if I chose a black paper, but I didn't have any black paper, so I just took the old brown paper bag from the grocery store. And if you leave these mushrooms on it, they will throw spores. These little white, let me move it out of the way, you'll see it. Do you see that? Do you see that little white, slightly grayish, but it's really white little pile? Those are spores that the mushrooms are throwing. And they're gonna start throwing them pretty quickly. Look at that, I wasn't kidding, look at that. So it was exactly 24 hours since we picked them. Look at that, isn't that something? I think it's pretty amazing. And that is one of the tests you can do to confirm that these are truly mushrooms, good mushrooms, honey mushrooms that are edible. Just because they're edible, they still need to be cooked. They should not be eaten raw. So I'm gonna cook them in a very simple way, okay? All I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna saute them with a little bit of onion, butter, a little bit of olive oil, salt and pepper, and then they're gonna go perfectly with a side of simply boiled potatoes. So let me show you how I'm gonna do that. Just like my mama used to do it. She would go in the back of the woods where we used to live in Latvia with a basket and a little knife, and she would just pick a bunch of these little mushrooms, and we call them apята. But here in the US, we call them honey mushrooms. So I have these beautiful homegrown potatoes, and I just peeled them, covered with water. And it's very important to season water, because if we want our potatoes to have flavor, we need to season it. So I have my pink Himalayan salt, and I'm going to generously season this water, because a lot of the salt will be absorbed by the potatoes, okay? We don't want bland potatoes. And the other thing that I always do when I boil potatoes to make it nice and flavorful, I will add some bay leaf. And they're kind of small, so I'm just gonna throw in 3 bay leaves, okay? I'm gonna put a cover on and wait until it boils. So I'm gonna warm up the skillet and add a little oil. You can put as little as or as much as you want to. I put a few tablespoons, okay? And I like to cook mushrooms with butter, which I will add a little bit later. And first I'm going to saute some onions. And all I did, I just took a large onion and I cut it in very thin slices. I like to slice them thin because I don't want the onion to be very present in this, in my mushrooms, but they do add a good flavor to the mushrooms. So I'm just gonna saute them lightly. I'm not gonna wait until they turn brown, just kind of a translucent little yellow. And now I'm gonna be adding the mushrooms themselves, okay? Very large mushrooms, I ended up slicing in half, okay? But little ones, I'm leaving them whole, but I did remove the stems because I know the stems can be a little woody. Listen, I am not going to claim that I am an expert in mushrooms at all, okay? So always do your research, look at the guidebooks, join foraging groups on Facebook, local to where you live, to know what you're actually foraging, because you don't want to make a mistake with mushrooms at all. You wanna be safe, okay? So this is why I believe that doing learning from guides and from books and to know what's growing around you, to be a little bit more self-sufficient when it comes to mushrooms, to what's growing around you. Okay, they're beginning to cook very nicely. I'm just gonna stir it a few times. Mushrooms are producing a lot of liquid, okay? And now I'm just going to season everything with some salt, some black pepper, okay? And that should be to taste, but I believe in food to be a little seasoned, all right? And I will add a little bit of, butter to make a nice, all right, let me just, probably like a tablespoon or so of butter. And I'm gonna turn the heat down. I'm gonna put a cover on and let this cook all together for the next probably 10 minutes, and let's see what it looks like, okay? And voila, dinner is ready. We have some sauteed honey mushrooms. I'm just putting a little bit of dill on top of my mushrooms, a little dill on top of the boiled potatoes, and a little melted butter. And voila, dinner is ready. My kitchen smells delightful, just like from my childhood. My siblings can testify. Mama was really good at foraging for mushrooms, and she knew which ones were perfect, and she knew the great locations right where we lived. So that's what I have for my family's dinner tonight. Just sauteed honey mushrooms with some homegrown potatoes, and the steam that's rising. Oh, guys, I can't describe it. With a little bit of fresh dill on top, it is absolutely perfect. So friends, I hope you are encouraged to know and learn what is growing around you, what is edible, and know how to forage safely. So friends, I hope you stay encouraged and try something new.